received an excellent report from HMIE Scotland. In fact, I think they came back and said that we have not so much improvements, just to keep what we're doing. And that was in respect of all our services, but particularly in terms of our youth services. So I would like to kind of take those questions back, if that's okay, to Gordon, to give you a fuller answer in terms of what you LGBT Scotland have planned for the future.
That's great, Michelle. No, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just in the back of that, a little question. You mentioned support and kind, that's in report.
Yes.
Obviously, you're not the monitoring office, but can you provide more details what this actually is? And what steps is the organisation taking to maximise this support? I think it's 1,500 was in the report,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure what that was actually.
My understanding would be that support, previously we provided venue hire because of our bases, but obviously we have a number of buildings that are closing and places that are available, and because we were in Park Street for a while, so accommodation was included as part of that. But as venues have become more difficult to access and they've had to move, that has slightly shifted, but they also benefit from the support of CLD staff who link them into youth services network, talk to them about funding opportunities that may be available, connecting to other partners. But again, I can remit that question to Gordon to give an example for 23-24 in terms of what that looked like in more detail.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Benny. Councillor Forrest.
Thanks, convener. Hi, Michelle. Good morning.
Thanks
for your report. Really good of you stepping in like that. Your report notes that your organisation's developed a new website. Has there been an increase in engagement with the service as a result of that? You know, are there more hits? Are people actually communicating via that?
In terms of the accessing the website itself, I think that's been invaluable, particularly where to connect people across Forth Valley as a whole. But I think what I'd like to, again, apologies for this, but I think I'd like to remit that to Gordon to get some specifics on hits to website and what that's looked like.
Yeah, that's fine. I understand completely. Yeah, no problem. Thank you, convener.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, Councillor Flynn.
Yep, thank you, Provost. Michelle, thank you for a very positive and a comprehensive report. My one question really is, you seem to have about 26 or so youngsters. I just wonder, because obviously I would guess in the Falkirk area there are far more youngsters that fall in with that your category. What you're doing to bring other youngsters, to your organisation. In other words, what marketing and advertising you do, if you happen to know what's happening in Falkirk, that'd be really useful to know.
I know that the connection with schools can help to promote the service to young people. So those links are vital, because in Falkirk, the young people tend to be like post-school. So that transition from one provision to another is really, really important. But again, if I could take that question back to Gordon to find more specifics on their plans for promotion and marketing of the service.
No problem at all, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Provost.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Thanks, Provost. I'm not sure you'll be able to answer this, Michelle, or not, and I can understand if you can. So, but how do the achievements of the group link to the aims of the council plan?
So, if we think about, like I said, they're detailed in the report in terms of working in partnership with communities. So, if we think about sort of outcome 3, more decisions made together at a local level, I mentioned the work with Fairer Falkirk and the poverty strategy, and it was really important that those voices were heard within council plans, because I think we can see by the creative arts programme that we put Unseen and Unheard that can often be difficult, and some of these things can seem distant. So those local decision making opportunities are really, really important. They also work with CVS as part of their mental health and wellbeing forum, again representing that voice of LGBTQ+ young people in Falkirk. In terms of poverty, we know that outcome 5, they're talking about access to digital services and the skills and confidence to participate online. Their Pride in Pixels platform that they have, that creates that opportunity. And I know that some young people have been moderators for that platform in the past. I'm not sure what that looks like for this year, but I know that has been there before. And just the opportunity for young people to have access to services and participate, really important. But in terms of mental health and well-being, there's a slew of quotes there from young people talking about the way they felt less socially isolated, reduction in feelings of loneliness. So loneliness is one of the biggest impacts on sort of physical health. So to have that opportunity for young people to take part in activities that connect them and reduce that is really, really important.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. Thanks.
Councillor Kelly.
Hi, Michelle. I don't know if you can answer this. I know it's horrible getting dropped in with somebody else's report and be expected just to come up with the answers. But on the focus plan, theme 4, substance use, it says the outcome, fewer young people choose to use substances. How is this measured? Do you know?
I'm not sure the detail of how that is measured as such, other than it's if young people have made approaches and said they're looking for support and help with that. So again, I'm sort of speaking to what I know from previously and probably not fully of the 23-24 activities. But an example of substance use is really to think about. It's not really always about alcohol, or we're thinking about what we would normally recognise as in terms of drug use or whatever. But there was a rise in young people vaping, and there had been approaches and discussions about that with young people, and so that had happened previously again. But I can remit those questions to Gordon for more examples of that and how they measure.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
Thanks very much, Councillor Kelly. A couple of questions for myself. How do the experience and outcomes of the young people who engage with the service influence council policy and practice? And can you outline any positive contributions the organisation has made to the community? Let's move on for Colin.
Again, would you mind if I remit that one to Gordon? I'm so sorry. I'm a last minute stand-in. I do apologise.
Not a problem. I've got another one. Maybe for Gordon as well. It's very difficult to set a man at short notice, realising you've done commendable. The report doesn't clearly note the total number of young people supported by the organisation. For example, on page 30, it lists the number of young people engaging with different services offered by the organisation. However, a young person engaging in the youth group might also be engaging in one-to-one support, therefore inflating the numbers listed. How many young people were supported by the service? What does the number look like in comparison to last year?
Again, you're right. Yeah, probably we want to put them to Gordon. Other than the number I have here is that there's 26 young people were registered to the youth group. My thought is that would be individual registrations and that would provide a count. But again, I can provide fuller information in terms of the comparison to the previous year.
Okay, and just on the group space, they had to leave their venue when it closed suddenly, and they're now in the Falkirk Carer Centre. How secure is that? And is it a lease or what is it?
I'm afraid I don't know the detail of the venue agreement, but I can take that back. They have had challenges in terms of moving. And yeah, I think that having a centre Falkirk space is incredibly important because people are coming from all over Falkirk, and that is a challenge, I think, for everyone.
I think it's important that we have a secure place, a place that you're not going to be turfed out, 6 months down the road.
Yeah.
Because people come to our centre and they build up relationships and things like that. So, any other questions? No other questions. So, thanks very much, Michelle.
Thank you for being patient.
And I'm sure Gordon will have his homework out. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much for being patient with me this morning. Much appreciated. Thank you very much. Bye. Bye.
So our next item is Denny and Dunny Pace Citizens Advice Bureau, Grangemouth and Bowness Citizens Advice Bureau, and it's the monitoring officer is Richard McFarlane. Richard.
Thank you very much, Provost. So I'll just give a brief overview on the Bureau to introduce the report. So Citizens Advice Bureau support our priority to reduce inequalities by tackling poverty. They offer free and confidential quality assured advice and support across a range of different issues. This includes money advice, particularly around benefits and debt. There are 3 bureaux which operate in the area, Denny and Dunny Pace, Falkirk and Grangemouth and Bowness. Between them, their services span across our communities. They have a core staff which is supported by highly trained volunteers. We work very closely with them through a joint action group, and they help support our work in tackling poverty, particularly through income maximisation. So just to highlight, in 2023-24, the 3 bureaux saw a 21% increase in client contact from the previous year, and they achieved significant benefit gains alone of just over £5.7 million for their clients, which again represented an increase of some 13% from the year before. I draw your particular attention to the impact statements and case studies in the report, which I think really tell the story of the work which the Citizens Advice Bureau are doing to support our communities. From that, I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Thanks very much, Richard. We'll now open up for questions. Councillor Forrest.
Thanks. Thanks, convener. Thank you. The report notes that Denny and Dunny Pace has had the fewest number of clients in both years 22 to 24 and 23-24, making up around a quarter of the clients across the entire Bureau. Is there scope for the Bureau's services to be reduced? What would that impact be on the entire service, on the service delivery?
So I think one of the key things to note there is that the Bureau work very closely together in collaboration. So although they have that kind of geographic area they cover, that does not necessarily mean to say they will only see clients from within that area. So they'll also potentially support clients across the board. So a cut to one is a cut to all, essentially, because any cut has an overall impact on the capacity of the Bureau across all 3 bureaux to continue to deliver the services to the level that they do. Essentially, the money we provide generally massively funds the staff. So the biggest impact would be on the staff. The staff then recruit, they train the volunteers that work at the Bureau. And that would also then see the volunteer numbers drop as well. So it would just essentially reduce the capacity across the board of the Bureau. As we see across the Bureau, there's been that sort of 21% increase in clients last year. those clients will go somewhere for advice and support, and there does seem to be a growth still and the need for that advice and support within our community. So the most likely impact would therefore be on our own services, our own community advice services as well. So I think it would just reduce the capacity would be the best way to answer your question.
I'm not suggesting there should be. Additionally, the staffing and resources, as you've just brought up, what do they look like across the Bureau? Since there are fewer clients, well, technically there are fewer clients within Denny and Dunny Pace, are there fewer staff there? What steps are being taken to consistently reshape your resources and staff based on the changing client levels across the Bureau?
So across the Bureau, they have a staff resource of 24. I don't have exactly the numbers in front of me for each Bureau, so I can't comment, but I'm happy to take that back and look at it and give you that staff complement that they have. The second part of the question around kind of reshaping resources, the Bureau have had to find efficiencies over the last few years because the cash settlement that we have them has remained flat for the last 5 years. So the impact of inflation and rising staff costs means that they have to be constantly creative as to how they manage their staff resources.
And that's constantly topped up with your 40 to 45 volunteers.
Exactly, yes. And as I say, the staff will go out and try and actively recruit those volunteers, and they do a fabulous job of that.
Indeed, they do. Thank you very much for your question and for your answers.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Forrest. I've got a question here, Richard. Falkirk Council provides community advice services which overlap with the services provided by the Bureau. The report notes that community advice services do not provide the full range of services which the Bureau provide, thus the duplication. Given the current financial climate, can the organisation advise if any thought has been given to ways that these services could streamline to reduce the overlap? For example, community advice teams providing benefits, debt assistance, and the Bureau providing employment housing support?
Again, thank you for the question. So I think certainly something that's, again, back to that point of capacity. I think the capacity across the board needs to be there because we continue to see this growth. And I'm conscious George is here as well and can maybe speak perhaps to the point on our own community advice services teams figures, but certainly Citizens Advice continue to see a huge number of people. I don't think our own services, if you ask my opinion, could deal with that alone. So I think it's necessary to have that capacity across the board. There is other aspects, I suppose, that bring people into Bureau as well because of the aspect of choice. So we engaged with our communities last year in developing the Building a Fairer Falkirk strategy that went before members in May. And as part of that engagement, there was certainly a level of trust and awareness in the Bureau services that perhaps wasn't fully replicated in our own services. So that choice was important because people don't always feel comfortable coming to us for that advice. So I think that the capacity and the choice are probably the two key elements of that. Certainly your point around bringing the other services the Bureau provides, so the other types of advice like the housing, like the employment and stuff is important because of the fact that that sometimes then teases out other issues as well. So people may present with a legal issue or an employment issue, but sometimes that conversation will open up something more towards, the kind of finances as well, because that's often an underlying aspect. Things that then leads towards the conversations about benefits and will lead to that point of income maximisation or debt management by the Bureau.
Okay, thanks, Richard. I'll go to George for any comment.
Again, I would just agree with everything that Richard has highlighted there. I think it is important that people have the choice. Our own team obviously focus in on debt and welfare benefits, and it's also fair to say that we see by far the largest number of all these people through the doors. And obviously you will see that in the figures that are reported up to you. But we do accept that we don't do employment law and that type of thing.
Okay, thanks very much, George. Another question. On page 45, the report notes useful information about the Bureau's performance. It could be useful for community advice services to also provide this information and for this to be included in future reports to better understand the demands and outcomes of both service providers comparatively. Can you advise if this could be done in the future?
I'm wondering if perhaps, again, George might be better placed to comment on that.
George?
Yes, it's already done at present, because the three bureaus and ourselves put our figures or stats into the Scottish Government, and there is a report that comes out from them every year. It would just be a question of making sure that you had sight of that report. Not only does it have a national report, but it breaks it down into the Falkirk area. So there are some tremendous figures in there that clearly show the benefit of the joint working together. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Binney.
Hello, I've got a question. Really, it's about all the citizen advice in all the areas, Grangemouth, Bonace, Dunnipeace and Falkirk. I was just wondering, looking at numbers and things like that, and I expect people come with a whole range of issues, and some will be very complex, being an ex-civil servant myself on welfare benefits. So I was just wondering, across the board, is all the volunteers and the permanent staff, do they have all the skills to regarding the issues and give them the correct advice, or are they transferred maybe to another citizen's advice, maybe say in Falkirk, to get that particular advice? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So yes, they're trained to a point on those issues, but there are matters obviously that are beyond their level of expertise, and they will refer on to expert agencies in that situation.
Okay, thank you.
If we could just go back to Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Provost. Just a couple of questions, actually. I think it's on page 47. It shows your reserves for the three different branches, and the one in Falkirk seems to be incredibly high. I think it's about 78% of your running costs. I just wondered, what your thoughts were on that, and if that was out of kilter with the other two.
So these were based on audited accounts for the previous year. So at the time of writing, this year's audit accounts weren't available. They are now available. So they were passed at the Falkirk AGM last week, and I'm conscious they have drawn down some of their reserves to invest in their business development. So
thank you. That's good.
To develop their services.
Thank you. That's good to hear. And my second question really is, as you obviously know, the energy prices have gone up 10% this month. The winter fuel payments been removed. And part of your forward planning, what sort of percentage or well, you wouldn't have exact numbers, but you obviously expect a reasonable number of people to come forward because it will push them into poverty. You know, when I've been behind people, say a big supermarket, and they're using these prepayment cards, I'm absolutely shocked by the amount of money they have to put on them, 20, 40, 60 pound, and that might only be for a week or two payment. So I just wondered, in terms of your own forward planning, how you plan to cope with that. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe the most relevant part of that, I would say, is the campaign that we're currently working on with the Bureau around the take up of pension credit, which I think was briefed last week. So we're working in partnership with Citizens Advice Bureau and Age Scotland on that, and George's own advice services teams to work towards a better take up of pension credit. And the Bureau have been very involved in that process, recognising the fact that the changes to the winter fuel payments may draw people out to claim pension credit for the first time, which is potentially worth a substantive amount of money to them.
Okay, thank you. And just a follow on from that, in terms of, because I don't know, when people apply who are new for pension credit, how long on average does the process take? I mean, if they came to your office and spent a few hours and then you put the application in, is it a matter of days, or is it a week or two or longer?
I'm not sure offhand. Again, I could try and take that question away and look at
Just
the
a general.
times. I noticed George was about to speak there, I think.
It is a bit longer, I'm afraid. The system isn't the fastest. It could take a month or two.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
And it's actually, in a few cases, it can take 3 or 4. So
right.
It really just depends.
In terms of the agency side, not your side, there's room for improvement there. Thanks,
yes,
George. Thank
absolutely.
you. Thanks, Provost.
If I could offer just a final point on that, Councillor Flynn, it is worth mentioning the backdated aspect of this. Albeit George says rightly that it might take some time. If people claim pension credit, there is a backdate period, a statutory backdate period that goes along with that, which is 3 months. So that claim, if it's made prior to the 21st of December, may still give rise to eligibility for winter fuel payments. So it's worth keeping that date in mind as something to aim towards.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, thanks for that information. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just go back to George. George, the national report, I wonder if you provide the Scrutiny Committee with a copy of that?
Yes, I can indeed. And I can supply you with debt figures as well, right across all the services. I was just quickly opening up there, and it may be of interest to note that last year the gas arrears, we actually saw 1,445 people across the bureaus and community advice. The gas arrears were at over 223,000. The electric arrears were at 355,000. So more than 500,000 in fuel debts. Now that's not just pensioners, obviously, that's across the actual board. So it is a real serious issue. But yes, I can get copies of those reports up there.
Okay, thank you. I'd say that 5.7 million figure, Richard, was that debt recovery or clearing debt?
That particular one was benefit gains.
Benefit gains?
Yes.
So people hadn't claimed their benefits before?
Exactly, yes.
So I'd just like to say I visited Citizens Advice in Falkirk a couple of times, and I've got an invitation to go to Denny. I've attended a number of AGMs, and when you hear the figures on what's been achieved and the people that are being helped, it's a phenomenal service. It's so really at Scrutiny here, we're just trying to tease out how could we improve things and things like that. We're not here to be critical. So it's definitely a great service, and if we as a council try to replicate that, I mean, we couldn't. And there is crossover, but that's necessary. So overall, I think it's a great service. I'm sure everybody here would agree with that. So, Councillor Patrick.
Just one point I was looking at, it's page 45, about volunteers. And this is the Falkirk one, particular volunteers leaving. It says you've got 17 active volunteers, but 13 have left. I mean, is volunteers a problem? I mean, that seems a large number for that have left compared with your current. But is that something which you struggle with? Because I know volunteers are so important to the service.
Yes, I think volunteer retention can be challenging, but it's certainly something that the Bureau are very, very proactive in doing. I think I mentioned about that drawing down on reserves, actually. That is partly for business development, and part of that business development in Falkirk is looking at the attraction and retention of volunteers.
Thank you. I think that this whole point about, as Provost Bissett has just said, I mean, to see the amounts of money which people are gaining, it's extraordinary. When people are struggling and an entitlement to it, it's not as though it's sort of some kind of windfall. It's there, and that's so important for us when we're looking at difficult financial issues, that people have got this money that they didn't have before. And I appreciate that the more people that are really helping do that, I'm sure the more you can help and guide people and take them through the service. So thank you for your answer.
Thanks, Councillor Patrick. And, I think there's Councillor Forrest.
I'd just like to say, what a fantastic job you've done. When you look at the benefit gain, I really commend you. I think they've done a fantastic job. 5.709 million. That is one heck of a sum. And I think you said earlier, what was it, 1445? 1,445 people had come forward for that. I mean, that you divide that, it gives some amount of relief to a heck of a lot of people. And I for one, want to say thanks to all of the people that have helped do that.
Thanks, Councillor Forrest. I'm sure that's very much appreciated. And I did visit, one time I went to visit the Citizens Advice, I was allowed to sit in one of the calls, I got permission. And when somebody's there, they've got no electricity, they've got no food, they've got nothing, they don't know where to go, don't know where to turn, just to get that immediate help. It's just phenomenal, helps them, and then follow-up support, just remarkable. So thanks very much for coming today and speaking to the report, and I think everybody got the answers that they wanted. Thank you very much. So our next item is Denny Citizens Advice Bureau Armed Services Project, and it's Ewan McWilliams.
Hi, Provost. Thanks.
Hi, Ewan.
Thanks for that. How's things? So this project is, it's the Armed Services Advice Project delivered through our Denny Citizens Advice Bureau, and it enables a kind of face-to-face worker to provide support to the armed forces community that's serving, ex-serving, and their families. And the key aims of this are to deliver on the commitment, the Armed Forces Covenant, and on the Council's priority to reduce inequalities. The report itself provides a summary of the work that's taken place during 2023-24. And it's really just there. I'll take some questions. I don't want to go through the whole report itself. It's all kind of present and accounted for. I'm just happy to open up to questions and take them.
Okay, thanks very much, Ewan. Councillor Anslow.
Thank you, Provost. I'll be brief, Ewan. It's just two straightforward questions. Given the fact that this is a key contribution to the Armed Forces Covenant, which Falkirk Council have committed to, as a veteran myself who's used the service and also as our veterans champion, can I ask, what would be the outcome if funding was reduced by either the council or alternative streams?
Is that your first question? Do you want to?
That's the first question.
I'll take that one just now if you want, before we go into your second. So there's really, I suppose there's two aspects to that. So if the funding stops, because it's funded partly by the local authority and partly by the Citizens Advice Bureau. So if either one of them was to stop, there would be two options. It would be to look for alternative sources of funding or reduce the service provision in line with available funding. The funding that we get just now aggregates up to 1 FTE, and they provide that service out of Denny Citizens Advice Bureau as their base. So any reduced funding would be directly related to that role and would affect the kind of service provision, and it would have to be adjusted to be in line with available funding, what that resource can buy.
Thank you, Ewan. My second question is, given the complex and expert service this provides, which I know personally has received, given the fact that the service being offered is also provided by the Citizens Advice and the Citizens Advice Service for the Council, has the organisation ever considered collapsing this support provided by the Service Advice Project into either the Citizens Advice as a whole or perhaps our services in order to minimise duplication? And second part of that, if it did, what would be the impact on our service users? I know what it would be, but I'm asking on behalf of the committee what would it be? Thank you.
Well, I think the service itself is a kind of specialist service provision. So the knowledge of the individual is able to pick on and target sources of support that are only open to or relevant to the armed forces community. So that in itself kind of detracts from the general service provision for kind of the Citizens Advice Bureau does. They're able to access and know of how to access these alternative sources that are open to them. So there's not so much a minimisation of duplication. There will be some elements of duplication there, but they won't be, the avenues that are open to the veterans will have a kind of wider, a broader scale, and they'll just target them all together as one because they're relevant to that kind of same query or inquiry that they've got. And I suppose looking at that, the impact to the kind of service user coming in and looking for that support, it would kind of break up and disaggregate what what they would be looking for. So they may have to then go to a number of different avenues individually rather than that they may not be aware of. So they may only, and the then kind of generic service may also not be aware of them. So there's probably a greater chance of missed opportunity for the individual to kind of seek the kind of levels or the provision of support that they need. And there may be a lot of kind of opportunities missed as a result of that.
Thanks, Ewan.
Does that help?
Yep, that's perfect. My final point, how at the moment are veterans directed to this service? Is it via the council or are there other means?
I think the majority of it comes from self-referral. So they're aware of the services that are available through the publicity and word of mouth that the Citizens Advice Bureau does. And then that's kind of shared within the community themselves. And then they're referred to by other agencies who work with the Citizens Advice Bureau that know that this service exists. They're referred to by them, so they come in through those, so a various number of routes.
Thank you, Ewan. I'd just like to thank you for a comprehensive report, because I know the liaison you have with that service. I know that service intimately. It is very much a one-man person, and it's a tremendous service that they do, and which I would not like to see go. So thank you very much. Please convey my thanks and appreciation to them. And just to let members of the committee know, as Veterans Champion, I also direct our veterans there when I receive emails or visits in my surgery. Thank you, Ewan.
Councillor Angelo, can I just ask you what your view would be if there was a service collapse? What do you think the effect would be?
If a service collapse was to happen, it would be devastating. Because at the moment, despite best efforts, and I know the efforts the Citizens Advice, Armed Services and Ewan and myself all make, it's not as joined up as what it could be. And that causes its own issues. If it was to go completely, the armed forces have, I can't describe it as any other, there is a certain complex need of benefits and services that they need without going into any specific details, but they are complex. Just for instance sake, it's never as straightforward as they've got mental health. It would be mental health and something else. In the armed forces, they are very protected. They know where to go, what to do when they come out. If they don't have that straightforward connection with someone who understands that community, and it's no disrespect to the council or Citizens Advice, but if you've not been in that community, that is a substantial expertise that actually helps reassure the veteran. And that's why it is essential. I don't know if that helps.
Thanks very much, Councillor Angelo. I think it's important to hear your views as a Veterans Champion. I just wanted to ask you about outreach work. So they're based in the Denny Citizens Advice Bureau, but where do they do their outreach work?
Across Falkirk.
Just across
It's
Falkirk?
across the whole of the Falkirk Council area, yeah. It's just that they're based from Denny Citizens Advice Bureau, but they will kind of work with anyone in the Falkirk Council area.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Forrest.
Thanks. It would be remiss of me not to add my thanks and show my appreciation for this organisation. You have, in the report it says, for Falkirk 504 people were supported and £1,821,336 of additional income was secured. That means for every pound that Falkirk Council has invested, there's been a return to the community of around £44.83, as well as providing support for some of the most vulnerable people in their health crisis. And I would like to say thank you so much for doing this for all these people. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor Forrest. Any other questions? Okay, thanks very much, Ewan, and we'll leave it at that.
Yep. Thanks, Provost.
The next one is partnership between Stirling and Falkirk Councils, NHS Forth Valley and Macmillan Cancer Support, and that's George.
Thank you, Councillor Provost. The councillor actually stole some of my figures there as well, but I'll redo those as well. Thank you. I think the important thing to acknowledge is this is a partnership between Forth Valley and the other councils. Our contribution to that is 23.5% of the funding, yet we get back 55% of the referrals. So from a Falkirk Council point of view, we're getting excellent value for money. As you just heard there, 504 people in Falkirk were diagnosed with cancer. More than half of them are in the terminal phase, that the life expectancy is 6 months or less. And the benefits gained for those 504 people was £1.8 million. So the return to Falkirk Council is, for every pound spent, £44.83 back. And this is for a group who are in medical crisis and in a very difficult health situation. So it's a fantastic project. They are working closely with the hospitals, so most referrals are made direct from the consultants or indeed from the hospice. There's very few referrals having to be made from a community basis at all, which is, again, it means that the people are getting the help a lot faster than they would have if they were waiting to come to either our own service community advice or indeed the Citizens Advice Bureaus. Into questions?
Okay, thanks. Thanks very much, George. Open up for questions. Councillor Patrick.
Yes, thank you. The report notes that due to an increase in clients, the service has had to take this decision to solely focus on cases where there is a sort of poor prognosis. So what impact has that had on the clients who don't fall into that bracket?
They will be seen by a community advice service or indeed by the Citizens Advice Bureau. It means they might have a bit longer to wait, but they will get seen. And again, we will still use the Macmillan service for access to grants and some of the other benefits that they can open up.
Thank you. And also the report stating that the council provides 23.5% of the project's funding, and yet 55.26% of the clients come from the Falkirk area. So excellent value for Falkirk Council, certainly. But is there a risk that as it's Stirling Council leads the project, but Falkirk residents who are getting the greatest benefit, that Stirling Council stops sort of subsidising, if you like, this work? And are we doing anything to sort of develop this partnership to make sure that it carries on?
Historically, the project actually started in Falkirk Council many years ago, but for I'm not overly sure what key reason, but we stopped that. We were getting funding from Macmillan directly, and Stirling took that on. So we're grateful to them for having done that, and certainly we will work away with them. But yes, you're right, there is a danger, particularly in cutbacks, where Stirling Council are putting in more money. They may choose to reduce some of that funding, and that will have a direct impact on the service. And it might mean that our own service has to pick up more cases from that as well.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Patrick. Any other questions? Councillor Forrest.
I think you might get a wee feeling of deja vu here.
Definitely. I know it's coming.
Once again, exact same figures. £1,821,336 of extra benefits and income. Between 504 people when your target was only 400.
400.
That's a 25% increase in your target, and more than 25. And once again, on behalf of us all, I think you've done a fantastic job, and many, many thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Forrest. I think we would all agree with that. And I'll finally, that's the last item on the agenda, but I'll just go to Sally. If Sally's any comments you would like to make?
I'd just like to say thank you very much to the monitoring officers for joining us today and for all the information they've given, and to the organisations themselves who indeed are the ones on the coalface, if you like, actually carrying out this vital work.
Yep. Thanks very much, Sally. So that concludes the business of the Scrutiny Committee. Thanks for your attendance.